Good afternoon, LEC community. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Ask an Educator. My name is Susana Elizarraras, and I am the Vice President of Educator Supports of the Latinx Education Collaborative. We are working to increase Latinx representation in K through 12 classrooms. I'm so excited because today we get to interview someone. I think you're our first interviewee out of Houston, Angelica
Yay.
de Leon Halphen. How are you, Angelica?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I hear there's some tricky weather happening in Houston.
We're having one of the worst windstorms in record, and power's out all over the place. So I'm crossing my fingers because so far my little section hasn't lost power. So
Okay.
seasick weather.
I know. I know. So heads up, y'all. If we cut off, it may be because it's actually been raining for about 2 days here in Kansas City. So it's just rainy and the typical fall rain. But yeah, to just jump in, Angelica, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do?
Well, I was born here in Houston. My father's from Mexico City. He did immigrate when he was in his mid-20s. I have been since the early 90s. I have 20 years in the classroom. I've worked as an administrator, as a teacher support specialist. I was part of a program that introduced STEAM to Houston ISD, which is my most excited. I was part of, back in 99, to date myself, part of the initiative to actually bring science and hands-on science and, how it should be taught. And a little after that, I was part of the fine arts movement. So I'm really big on new movements. I just love that. My first degree was actually in theater, minored in music, went back to school. So I ended up, education. And then I got my master's in curriculum and instruction with a specialization in bilingual education. So it's something very near and dear to my heart.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know if you knew this, but our CEO founder actually majored in music as well. Or, he's a music major. So something about music brings you all to education. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. I was about to say, I don't know if I should do it like a freeze.
I know.
I'm
just saying something about music brings you all to education. Something about it.
Well, I mean, the thing is with theater and music, they are ways to teach someone a story, to share feelings, to educate. So, I mean, it goes hand in hand to me. When I was in the classroom, I always felt like they were shows. Just like, okay, I got to get them engaged, entertained, and walking away wanting more,
Yeah, we were just talking before we hopped on about how flexible we have to be, right, as educators, and pivot. We're always reflecting on how did that lesson go, how did that intervention go, and so yeah, that is very much like a performance.
Oh.
Sorry, I was saying that was very much like a performance.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to hop into the meat of our conversation today, tell us about your leadership story, your upbringing, your journey as a student or a professional, anything that you would credit for where you are today.
Sorry, that darn wind. Okay, it's back. Well, I love how I've been attending different meetings and hearing people's stories. And it's really important that I share, because I know a lot of people have my story. We didn't have someone that believed in us. My father, very old fashioned. He only went to first grade, but he came on to make his own business, successful. I went to private school. He paid for college. Very blessed in that area. But I was not the perfect Mexican daughter. I had my own ideas. I wanted to go to college. He would fight me about it, tell me I was, I won't go on, but we've heard that. And but you know what? I was an avid reader. And in my books that I would read, and I started reading early in kindergarten, as did my daughter. We just have that love of reading. And there was always a heroine. And she believed in herself. And so I always felt like I was a heroine. And, my dad was, he's a good man and I love him with all my heart. Anything he did was out of love. But I always saw him as the dark character that wanted to keep the princess from, finding herself and being herself. And so I was so very grateful to books and reading, because it gave me that escape that it's okay to be different. And I've always been different. And, 52 this year. And I love it when people say, don't change. Don't let people change you, because people, want to change you and make you something that they think you should. And that's no. And so since I can remember, I've always pushed and pushed to be myself. And I pushed to follow my own drum in my classroom as well. When I started in the early 90s, everything was textbooks. And then after like the mid 50s, like 95, 94, 95, we started looking at thematic learning. And so I would go every day after school, go to workshops, learn. The kids would go, what did you learn? Maestra, tell us, what did you learn? And it was exciting because they knew I was in my 20s. I was just a baby teacher. And, but I think even though I really didn't have a good background, I understood that they were children. They had hopes, they had dreams. And I had a lot of teachers that were mean to me. I went to, my dad tried to assimilate us, all white school. I really didn't notice until I got older that a lot of it was because I was Hispanic, one of the only Hispanics. And I had teachers tell me I was stupid, I was dumb. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to have to work harder.
Yep. Sorry, Angelica, I think you're frozen. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Interestingly, this is not the first time that I've been in an interview with someone who's had tricky weather happening, and it impacts like the signal and everything. So no worries. For some reason, this is not the first time. But yes, so that actually, I'm really glad you started by saying that you have a story that many can relate to, right? Kind of having traditional parents and particularly your father, right? And the idea that assimilation is the goal, right? Because of the, just the embedded fear, of being different and of being, in some cases, being, targeted in violent ways. And right. So like you said, it's like we understand where that came from and we can appreciate that. But yeah, it is difficult to kind of look past that and say like, this school in particular doesn't have to be this box. We talked about this when we met one-on-one, right? Like this box that we expect kiddos and their families to fit into. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way things have to be, Right. Yeah. Well, you talked about, I think you talked about you have siblings, right? Is that right?
Yeah. My little brother, and he struggled, but he was really quiet and shy. And it was so funny because my mom, even though she's Hispanic, she's very, very fair. My dad's very dark. So I took after my dad, and my little brother was so fair. They'd say, he's not your brother. He's white, you're brown, but he worked hard, and now he's an engineer for Chevron.
Nice.
He's got a great life, married, children. And it was because of programs that we had at University of Houston that really helped him. And which is programs I'm hoping to see more and more schools adapt is first time college students, and so he would stay after school. He would tutor because he struggled. I have ADHD and he has ADD, and we both have dyslexia. But back then we really didn't understand it as much, which I really think art and music and stuff really helped my dyslexia, because it's just your brain's wired differently, just as ADHD, and you can actually use it to your advantage after a while, but it's one of those things I feel like I can dream,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you went to school there in Houston, right?
So I did my, I went to private Catholic school. And then up until high school, I wanted to do theater and drama. So I went to a local school. I did my undergraduate at Stephen F. Austin, and I did my graduate at University of Houston. And I was hoping last year, there's a program that they're having at Harvard. And that's one good thing. They're kind of getting in trouble for not having enough diversity. And so hoping to join one of their programs.
Nice.
The dream is to get my doctorate, and I would love to continue. You know, sadly, I can retire in 2 years, which, you know, I'm not going to stop, but go on to the next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pursuing your doctorate is such a you know, a good goal to have, right? And we have a lot of people in our community who have come on Ask an Educator to talk about how difficult it's been to be many times the first of our families to go to college, let alone grad school, let alone doctorate, right? And so it's amazing to hear stories like yours, right? Because ultimately we become, you know, people like you become mentors and people that other people look up to, you know?
And it's a privilege. It's a privilege because I had no one to talk to. I would just have to figure things out. I mean, I remember in second grade, I would go to my mom for a question on homework. She goes, I failed the second grade. You know that. So I would be like, psst. You know, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of that. It was like, you better figure it out. You know, so you can look at your struggles as like, and take that in as like something negative. But for me, no, it builds you. It builds you. It prepares you. Like even with my dad, I said, Dad, you were so mean to me. And he always goes, te saliste bien. You know, he's like, you're fine. Don't even, you know, but then later I said, no, but Dad, you made me strong. Yeah. You made me strong. And I just really learned through my experiences, like, be yourself. Be you. Be kind to yourself. You know, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from your mistakes. I worked at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. I presented at NASA. I had my own TV show on for HISD for their science faction. And I just joke about it. People are like, how do you do it? I'm like, because I don't think I can. It's mindset. It's just like people ask, you want to do this? Okay. You know, you'll learn it. You'll get it, you know, but you have to just believe in yourself. You know, and surround yourself with people that believe in you. I can honestly say that the teachers that I have worked with over these last 25 plus years, don't make so up, are still my dear friends. Yeah. And I am so appreciative of that. I think I'm seeing the education is they're trying to make it a business and they're trying to pin teachers against each other. No. Yeah. I worked at the second largest elementary in HISD, over 2,000 students. We had 12 second grades. Wow. 6 English and 6 bilingual.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I was one of the bilingual, and we were, you know, sisters and brothers. We took care of each other. We helped each other. And we were family, and we still are, you know, and I love that because that's what you need to do, you know. Yeah. Be a team. Know them. It's not a competition. You know, you're working together. It's just like when my parents, I turned on administrative, and I would tell my parents, I'm not here to tell you you're a bad parent. Yeah. I'm here to tell you we're on the same team.
Yep. You talked about, you know, all the things that you've gotten the privilege, right? You call them privileges to do, right? It's a way of taking risks, though, you know, and some of us have been kind of taught not to, and to kind of like, nope, just fall in line and stick with it. You know, you stick with the mainstream, and it takes a little bit of taking risk. I got asked a question the other day for a local scholarship program here in Kansas City. Shout out to Hispanic Development Fund and Avanzando at UMKC. They asked a question on some questionnaire I was filling out, and they said, if you had something to tell, you know, future students, first-time college students, you know, I said, don't be afraid to make mistakes. For a lot of my life, I was afraid that I wasn't, and even to this day, right? You're afraid that it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and I'm afraid to make mistakes. I'm afraid to do it wrong. It's how we learn, though, right? And it's a part of that taking risks that you talked about.
And I will say one comment that I remember getting in algebra when I was in high school. The teacher told me that she goes, Angelica, she says, you may not always make great, I would make C's. It was my dyslexia, but she says, but you learn from your mistakes. And I just was like, and I was like 16. I was like, I do, don't I? You know? And sometimes but that sticks with me. And that's what, like, I would tell my students as we're working and, oh, teacher, I can't get it. I go, it's okay. Or, oh, I got it wrong. Yeah, but look, you got this part. You're almost there. And they're like,
yeah.
And I would always see them. I wouldn't have a job if you just got it easy.
I know.
I'd be out of work.
Yeah.
They go, oh no, poor maestra. No, we're gonna, but it was like that. I said, no, I'd have kids waiting outside on the first day when I taught first grade. One little girl didn't want to come in. She goes, because I can't read. I said, oh, I'm so glad you can't read. Her eyes got big. Her dad's got to read. I go, no, I have a job. It's like, so, like I said, I probably don't say the things that most teachers say, but I was like, no.
Well, we've trained our students that we've trained our children to think that making mistakes is a bad thing, right? And inherently the word mistake sounds like bad, right? It has this bad connotation, but it's the only way. I mean, it's one of the best ways to learn science. Right. I mean, you're a big STEAM person. That's what it is. It's trial and error, trial and error,
Yeah. And I really love how science has developed over the years, from what I did in 99 to what, a lot of people were like, they were STEM back in 2010. Yeah, there was. I was part of the first elementary in the United States to become the first STEM elementary. And we didn't even know we were doing STEM. But it's just that mindset of not just, doing, I have my hypothesis and you go through your steps. I was incorrect. No, it's that engineering design cycle. Okay, let me go back. Let me look at more research. Let's look at the question again. Let's look. And I love that. And I love being a facilitator, providing those materials, providing that technology, providing all that, the kids learning to work together. At first, it's hard and they struggle. But once they get it, and I just walk around, and that is your true goal as a teacher, is to be a facilitator. I've provided you everything you need. I'm here for guidance, and they start to learn to communicate, talk, and problem solve. And just seeing how that's changed from 1999 to now and what's up ahead. And I still remember, this is something I'll never forget. It was like 99 or 2000. And we were at a meeting, and the gentleman, I forget from what organization, but he said, you are preparing your students for jobs that haven't been created yet. So we all kind of looked at each other. Well, he was so right. Yep. With the coding and, and when people go, oh, coding seems so hard. I'm like, if I can do it, you can do it. It's just understanding those patterns and understanding, and that's why for me, my big push is starting coding in kindergarten. And that's what we're trying to do here in Houston, is starting in kindergarten, make it available. It's just like an additional class. Because I remember when science was not considered a class. And so I remember begging my principal back like in 2002 if I could do a science ancillary. And, that was just so unheard of, what is science now? There's science labs in elementary. So it's great to see how things have just, as they're evolving and seeing. And like with our STEAM program, we've had the lowest schools in Houston ISD. And to see the growth, to see how the children grew, how discipline was affected. There was less discipline because the kids weren't sitting in chairs and, they were working together. They were making friendships. And so I will always treasure that. Always.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the innovation, right? You have whole design thinking schools these days, right? You have whole design thinking programs. We know, I mean, here in Kansas City alone, we have, that's kind of getting big. This non-traditional way of thinking about how learning happens, right? So coding, for example, coding is all about asking questions and making mistakes, right? I don't know much about coding. What I do know is that you make a lot of mistakes and you ask a lot of questions, right? And you have to finagle with the systems and all of that to figure it out.
Right. And I think, I know project-based learning is something that people have been talking about for years and years. And I think that's the only way to teach.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing thematic units, it's like we started with a book.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, okay, teacher, what's, they do the drum roll. And I'd introduce, well, this is second grade, like they did a little drum roll and I'd introduce the book.
Yeah.
And for the week. But from there, we would kind of go around that theme. Now, the students are looking, I mean, I can sit there and ask you, okay, I want you to read, we're going to study about bridges around the world. Okay, we're going to look at measurements and we're going to look at, and then science, we're going to look at weight and balance. And we're going to, well, can you imagine telling the kids, okay, we need to be able to bridge because of food can't get to this country, and taking real life events and seeing the families and seeing what's happening and then seeing what the challenges are and then having them look at materials and then giving them prices for materials. Say, okay, but your budget is this much. Well, the kids are going to read, they're going to research, they're going to have to do math, they have to write a proposal, they have to present. And then teachers, you have people going, but how's that learning? Excuse me? You really think a kid's sitting here listening to a teacher? I didn't learn that way.
Well, yeah, and it sets you up for real life. I mean, the ultimate goal of school, right, is to set us up for a successful life, right? And that means, running a home and running a family, or not running a home and, using a van to be cross-country traveling, and right. But all of those components, you're going to use math, you're going to use science, you're going to use problem solving, you're going to use a little bit of art here and there, right? So I taught sixth grade math for years, and my kiddos would always, especially when you start introducing the variables and it just throws them for a loop, they're like, why are we using letters? And every year, I mean, several times a week, kiddos are like, we're never going to use this, miss. We're never going to use this. And I'd always have to be like, algebra is all the time. You're trying to see how much you can afford. So how many XYZ of whatever you can buy, right? Like, that's algebra. It's just we have to use it so well that now you don't have to do the rounding. You don't have to pull out your calculator. Now you don't have to, right? Regardless of how we get there, it's all algebra, right? It's all math. So you have to convince the kids of it too, like this is worth it, y'all.
My favorite thing to do was to go to the stores around my school, and I would take pictures and I would put the information, because sometimes they make it look like a deal, but it's not really a deal. Like, if you buy this, you get this for this much. But if you buy this for that much, and you don't realize that you're actually paying more. Yep. And then when I started introducing that to my fifth graders, they got mad. They thought that the store should be turned in. They thought that they were like this. Well, that's stealing. I go, no. That's where you got to know your math. Yep. And I would have parents go, oh, gracias, because they say, and I would tell the kids, and they were empowered, and the parents are kind of, wow, okay, Mijo actually helps me at the store now because he wants to catch the crooked advertising. But that's the real world is so important to them. I remember doing a project with fifth grade math that we gave them a certain amount of money for a birthday party. And again, it's an area that a lot of poverty. And it was so funny because I had kids saying, but teacher, because we had a list of items with prices. And then no, I can go down to the dollar store and I can get this, and I can bake a cake for cheaper than that. And I said, baby, you are wonderful and you are smart. I said, but pretend you've been hired and this is the money they want it spent, and they want you to spend it at a store. But that's how our kids are. They're resilient. They're just, but I loved it.
Resourceful, right? Resourceful. Like, I know I can get icing there cheaper than at the,
Yeah. I can make my own pastel. Where you?
Yeah, we underestimate kids all the time, and inherently, then they underestimate themselves, right? Because we've told them, adults tell you what to do. Adults have the knowledge, and you don't, right? When it's like, no, actually, how about this? Go to that dollar store and bring me a picture of it or whatever, let's start doing the math. And they get excited about that, Oh,
it's hilarious. Yeah,
it really is. It's so much fun. I really miss being in the classroom, but
I know.
We talked a little bit about some hurdles you've kind of run into here and there. But if you had to mention a hurdle that kind of made your dream of being in education a little tougher, what has that been? Sorry, did I freeze?
Yeah, I just heard hurdle.
Oh. I was saying we've touched on a couple of hurdles, but you know, if you could name a hurdle that you've experienced trying to you know, get into education, what has that been?
Okay, I got you back. No, I think I know what you're asking. Yes. The biggest hurdle that I keep facing is people wanting to make education fit in a box. And every time I try to, and I'm in positions where I can, I was creating assessments. I was a curriculum writer in science for K through 2, and I wrote assessments and I trained teachers. And the focus was on testing and testing. I'm like, okay, that's a part of it. But we need to look at curriculum instruction. Our teachers need help, need more workshops, more training. And you'd be surprised how people above me would just constantly tell me I was wrong. And I felt like saying, well, if education is just these last 10 years, the way that I've seen it change. And I know that before that, my kids are reading and writing in 2 languages. Now our kids can't even read and write in any language. And I know I told you earlier, I'm working right now with Straw Bees and Leader Edutech, but I finally took a position because of, I'm going to be working with HISD as a reading interventionist.
Oh, nice.
At one of my old schools. Yeah. I love reading too. That's what I'm saying. I love it all. Let's just, but no, but
you love this madness that is called education.
I know. Well, the thing is, Denver Harbor is a very famous area in Houston. It's an old, very Hispanic community, and I used to work there. I did work there. It was the STEM school that me and a couple of teachers helped create, and but our kids are so behind. Because they don't have the phonetics, the phonemes, and because people were like, nope, they need to start learning this, and they need to, you know. And I've seen kindergarten go from learning how to learn through play, constructing, building, to, oh no, our kids are going to learn their sounds. There's letters. They get to differentiate between a word and a sound. I mean, I don't know what's happening, you know, with you, but we're testing our pre-K and our K.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're testing these little ones and not letting them build those skills that are needed, we're seeing it. And so they want them to already be reading words. And by 1st grade, they want them writing in paragraphs, and the kids going, bah, boy, you know, or ma. And it's so, actually, because of COVID, a lot of money was given. And so a friend of mine who's now principal at that school, and so I'm really excited. I'll be starting next week, and all I do is pull small groups, and we're working with simple phonetics. We're getting the background that they missed. And so I'm going to be able to do it in Spanish and English, you know, depending on, and so I'm just so excited.
That's so exciting.
Because, you know, it's like, these are the kids that just, and, you know, and just tell me it's okay, you know, and we're just moving too fast. And that's why I tell in my workshops to my teachers, I was like, if you've ever watched cooking on TV and you're trying to follow it, and you're still there trying to separate the eggs, and they're on there with the souffle, and you're like, wait, I'm separating the eggs. We're doing that to our kids. We're going too fast. Everybody goes at their different pace. And we have to break away from that. We have to break away with this strict, you've got 2 weeks with it, you know. That's why project-based learning is so important, because you're still working on the skills, and they get the peer communication. Yeah. And that's what they need. I mean, one of my favorite experiences in 2nd grade, I think it was like my 2nd year of teaching, and I was trying to teach regrouping. And the kids, there's one kid, Julio, he tried and he tried and he tried. And I worked with them. I sent stuff home. I got very manipulative. I started going to workshops and getting books, trying to figure out. A month later, I had him sit with another boy. He goes, well, no, the little boy goes, I'm finished. He goes, can I work with Julio? I'm done. And I really understand this, miss. And I was like, I need to go ahead. 5 minutes later, at the most, Julio looks up and goes, Maestra, why didn't you tell me that?
No.
So it was a great learning experience for me because I can, and sometimes as teachers, we think, okay, well, I taught you. Well, how many ways did we teach you? That was another lesson I learned from one of my math gurus was don't just teach how you learn it. Try different ways that a child can learn but most of all, let them work together and help each other. It just empowers that kid. And I think teacher talk to student talk is so uneven right now.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it's like, I mean, Angelica, you're hitting on so many intricacies of teaching, right? Like we spend a lot of time talking about standards and, like you said, testing and attendance rate, like all of those things, when it's like there is a science, there's a pedagogy behind teaching and what works well. And what works well for one student isn't going to work well for your other 24, right? So like, it is it's a tough job, but it is really cool. I remember something similar when I had a student who was from Vietnam, and the way that her family was teaching her math was pretty different from the way we were teaching math, right? And her shoulder partner just wasn't getting it. And she said, let me show you this way. And the exact same thing happened, right? And I was like, yes, I love it. Let's move toward conceptualization, right? Because let's get away from the programmatic, like, oh, you do this, you do that, right? Like, all right, so do you understand why this? I mean, there's so much that goes into teaching. But yes, you're right. I mean, we started this by you talking about the hurdle of education being put into this box, right? Of like, this is how it has to happen at this time on this day with this many people, right? Like, boom, rigid.
Well, we go and we tell our teachers, okay, we want you to differentiate your classes, make sure you have your groups, make sure that you are, applying whatever to each, which is perfect. You want to make sure you have your groups and where you're meeting the child where they're at. But then we want to give them standardized tests.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And then it's been proven that these tests are grades above reading level. They're higher for bilingual, sometimes 3 to 4 grades. And I'm sitting there looking at the words, and it's not fair. Those tests are not fair. And we got to quit looking at our kids as numbers. And I mean, as an administrator, how many times kids would just say, get so mad because so we're taking a test to prepare for a test. They're going to be taking so they're like, why? All we do is test. Yeah. And kids would complain to me. And I said, you know what? I agree with you. And I'm sorry. I would just apologize to them. I said, let's just make the best of it. But you know what? You're going to be older soon and you can make a difference. You can be that voice. And, like I said, I've always been out of the box, which you should be. But I had a teacher one day, I had left. That was like when I first went to be a teacher development specialist. And I went to the school to visit I was doing a program, and she goes, oh, miss, I'm so happy you're getting up there. And I said, oh, really? She goes, you can make this now. And I said, well, I'm just one person. She goes, but it starts with one. And
yeah.
I was like, golly. So, so that's the hurdle that I keep facing. Is, as I say, but you keep telling me I'm wrong. You keep telling me I'm wrong. And then they want to micromanage me because they don't want me to sneak in stuff. What is happening? And if y'all aren't being successful, we're seeing it in our numbers. We can't get our kids to come to school. I would want to come to school.
Yeah. You know what? You talked about that teacher who said, I'm so glad you're moving up. You can make change. The sad undertone of that is it speaks to how little we invite teachers to the table, right? Like teachers who are in the grass, right, day in and day out, are very rarely invited to the table where these decisions are being made, which is, and parents, right? Parents, even less so, are being invited to the table. And that's also, part of that.
I just don't understand it, how our teachers do not have any voice. We've taken their voices away. We have not, we don't empower them. And that's the thing that we, which I love about the school I'm going to, because I walked in, it had a great, that, everybody it just was relaxed. And I know it was because my friend, she's like me. I don't even done the compass north and south. I'm a very big south and she's a very big south. And it's about listening. But I don't know if it's insecurity or what, why some people just want, no, it's my way or the highway, my way. And I've worked with principals. I'm like, this teacher's having a problem. Well, they can find another job. No, they're a great teacher. They're not doing anything wrong. You want them to follow this, but they've been following this for 10 years. And look how successful their numbers are.
Yeah.
Why are we picking them? And then we're kids. We don't ask our kids what they want.
I know.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? There's so much, I called it madness earlier, right? Like there's so much, so many hurdles in education. I mean, we've scratched the surface on a federal level, down to the state, down to the local, like it's so much. So I have to ask you, you mentioned it earlier, right? What keeps you going?
I guess what keeps me going the most is the kid in me.
Aww.
And I think, I want the kids. I mean, I'm a mom. I think about, but I think about the kids and I think I want them to dream. And, as I was going to classrooms, I would ask kids, so what do you dream about doing? They don't dream anymore. And that's my other thing. I want my kid, I want our students, I want our future, our children to dream. I want them to imagine they can do it and shoot for the stars. You might just hit the moon, but hey, that's that's not bad. But just dreaming and believing in themselves. And that's why I say, can you imagine if we just threw these awful tests away? We need assessments. Assessments are important.
Yeah.
But they need to be written by the teachers or at least the school.
Yeah.
And where our kids are not seen as numbers, but seen as possibilities and dreams and hopes. And, I think about my experiences over the years. And like I was telling you, I'm very reflective. You got to learn. You've got to always learn. I love new teachers. They're so excited and they have new stuff for me to learn about. And I always tell them, look, I learned from you. You learn from me. It's what it's about. Just because I've been doing this a long time, please, I want to learn. What are they telling you in school, and putting it together to make the perfect beast, because every school's different. Every class is different. And that's what makes it, important for our students is that they see that you're looking at them as a human being and a possibility. And I love all the quotes now. It's like, you have a flower and it's not growing. You don't change the flower, you change the environment, and, people would say to me, oh, what do you do, Miss Halphen? Do you, because I had a lot of friends that had little treasure boxes and this and that. I never did that. They say, Miss, how come you never give us candy or treasure box? I said, because I give you knowledge and power. And they'd be like, yeah, and I listen to them, like I said, the years that I have in there are just so many wonderful memories. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
It's seeing the bad now, but just seeing the good. And when something good happens and just wanting to see more of that, someone's got to fight for our teachers.
Yeah.
Someone's going to fight for our kids. And I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm so ready to do that. And I'm hoping and praying that, I can eventually get to that point where I can do something where I can, help the families, help the kids, and, show them that there's so many options out there.
Yeah.
What they're willing to work for and be passionate about.
Yeah. I love what you said. I was asked a variation of this question today. What gives me hope? And I said, it's when you go into schools and you see the genius in kids. You watch. I went to a living museum yesterday at an elementary school here in Kansas City, where they had done these projects for Hispanic Heritage Month, and it was a living museum. And you go, and they had their posters, and you push the poster. There's like a little, a button on the poster. You push it, and the kids started their speech and it was like, I know, I was just like blown away. That's, you know, where that question, what keeps you going, you know, what gives us hope. It's like, man, these kids are genius and they have so much talent and you know, knowledge and love and care, and you know, they're so genuine and authentic. You know, I think you and I related on that. I think a lot of teachers would relate on that. That's what keeps us going is the kids, right?
Yeah.
The next question I have is a little, you know, more difficult to talk about, right? Because so Latinx educators are the fastest growing demographic of educators, which is great news, but we're also the quickest to leave after only an average of 3 years, versus the nationwide average of 5, which both numbers are not so good. And they've been greatly impacted by COVID as well, right? I mean, we're seeing a spike or a dip in that average. But why do you think that is? You know, Latinx educators kind of leaving the classroom a little, you know, sooner than anybody else.
I think it's a couple of things. Mm-hmm. And I think one of them is the programs that we're using. We are not using programs that are good for our ELL learners. Mm. And they are expecting too much of them. Mm-hmm. And so with the teachers, I'm going to show you when I was an administrator, and I would tell the teachers would tell me, oh my God, just by the time we get them to this level, they're behind level. So by the time the teacher gets frustrated, because then what we do, instead of saying, oh, okay, you know, Miss Ortiz, your kids were, I know you're teaching 2nd grade and you've got some kids that are reading at a kindergarten, 2nd semester, and a lot that are 1st grade. We don't do that. Then what we do is we hold them accountable and we expect them to bring them up. Mm-hmm. Even though they're working hard. They're working nights and days and weeks. I used to do directives to my teachers and say, you're not taking any work home this weekend. Mm-hmm. I've seen you do it 2 weeks. No, but no. Mm-hmm. You know, I was their appraiser. I said, I'm your appraiser. Mm-hmm. I'll hold it against you. And they're like, you can't do that. I'll find a way. And then later they come back. I said, I want you to just not think about school. And they're like, oh my God, it was so weird. And, you know, I actually went out to a movie or I did something. And, you know, and that's another thing. We are putting unfair expectations on our teachers. Yeah. That I don't think I could, you know, looking back, if you told me that, because I know working with these, you know, with upper management, seeing them say, oh, well, this is an easy task. Oh, this is easy. Yeah. But you know what? Once you got that plate and you start putting all those little things, you run out of room. Mm-hmm. And so our teachers are having to stay after school. They mm-hmm. come in early. You know, they're working nights and weekends. I don't blame them. We're burning them out. Yeah. We need to step back, quit telling them how to teach. You're hiring professionals. You're hiring people that just went to school. Yeah. You know, we're here to support you. We don't support anymore. Yeah. We go into your classroom. We observe you. We, like my observations, I tell my teachers, okay, I've got this week. Tell me what day you want me to come in. You know, and if something comes up, you tell me, we can move it. I've got this 2-week window that I can do your assessments. I can do your appraisals. And, you know, Miss Halphen, thank you for doing that. I go, no, you're an adult. You're a professional. Nobody treats us like that. I'm like, no. Yeah. I won't go into classroom. Am I doing it right? Am I doing right? This is your classroom. What do you think? Right. Let's sit down. How do you think the lesson went? How did you do? You know, we don't do that anymore. We start to, no, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, no, we want you to have, this is how we want your room to be set up. This is how we want, and here's your schedule. And they would tell me, oh, Miss Halphen, the last appraiser I had would come and say, well, you were supposed to switch at 10:15. You were supposed to switch to this part of the lesson. And you didn't switch until 10:18. Yep. And I would
or your bulletin boards, they have to have this amount of items on them and this kind of grading and this kind of scoring system, and make sure you put the rubric on, like all the things.
And that stuff, that doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. We don't let our teachers work together. We take away their ancillary, that time that they can sit. Sometimes they just want it. Like I've even had parents say, oh, they're just going to get together and gossip. I said, so
Yeah.
I did that too. You did that too. Don't even tell me come out and no. That's how you build your relationships.
Yeah. Trust.
Is
Yeah.
by, talking and laughing and supporting each other. We don't let that. They're working 24/7 and they wonder why they can't stay. I don't blame them. We need to back off. We need to treat them again like professionals and provide support, because that's the way that I did with my teachers. And it's sad because they would tell me, "You're a unicorn, Miss Halphen." I'm a what? Yeah, you're rare. Oh, but I said, but it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
It should not. And I would tell them, and they say, I know we should do this and this, but I've been doing this. I said, was it working? Yeah, well, it's fine.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not looking at your clock. I'm looking at your kids.
Yeah.
I see what your objective is. And I want to see, are those kids engaged?
Yeah.
And what are they doing? Are they actually doing hands-on? Are they exploring? Are they, and it took this, by the second year, my teachers finally started getting it, that I wasn't there to, I got you doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Or, constantly just, no.
Yep.
This is your classroom. Enjoy, and then enjoy. They don't enjoy it. Would you enjoy that?
Yeah.
Someone constantly. So no, I don't. I'm not shocked. And that's another thing that people tell me. Oh, teachers are just lazy. No, they're the hardest working people I know.
So hardworking.
Oh my God.
It's such a tough job. And there's no way around it. The way the system works right now, there's no way around. I remember there was one time I was sitting at my kitchen table and my little brother was over and my husband, and I just started crying. And they're like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I have all this grading to do and lesson planning. I have a phone call I need to make to a parent. Like, I'm so overwhelmed." And that's on a daily basis. That's like every single day. I'm talking Saturdays and Sundays too, right? Every day you're like, the workload. And then you have to teach for 6-7 hours straight. You get a 20-minute lunch, right? Like, if that, because you got to run and look at your mailbox and you got to check your voicemail and, like,
go to the bathroom. What do this?
Go to the bathroom, drink some water, maybe. Well, yes, there's so much to be worked on, but I really enjoy this last question because, it inspires me every time I hear the answer to this question from educators I interview. And the question is, if you had one thing that you wanted all your students or all of the teachers you lead to walk away from your class or your district knowing and learning, what would that be?
Oh, no pressure here, but
I know.
When I think about just reflecting on my years as teaching, my years of teacher trainings, when I want someone to leave, I want them to leave feeling empowered and excited. There's nothing better when kids leave your room and they're all like, "Wow, that was cool." Or teacher come up, "Oh my God, I can do this." So inspiration. I love inspiring kids. I love inspiring teachers. That is something that is priceless. And I always would joke when I would, like, whether I was teaching or presenting, the kid that was kind of like, "Oh, I don't want to be her," to teacher, what? To the teacher in the back wanting to grade her papers, put her stuff down, and come up to me at the end. "I really enjoyed this. I can use this." And that, to me, just being able to inspire someone and encourage them to do their best, to do something more, whether it's want to read more or they dream to, I do want to be an astronaut. Oh, that is just something that is priceless, and things that I treasure,
Yeah. Inspiring people. The gift you're giving people, right? For life, right? We often, you talked about like how we often take the humanity out of our kiddos and we look at them as numbers and as an attendance mark and all of that, right? But the impact you can have on someone's life when you truly invest in your classroom and in your school and in your district, right? The trajectories of our kids' whole lives and livelihoods are impacted by their K through 12 experience, So Angelica, this has been such a fruitful, amazing conversation. I already knew it when you and I met. I was like, look, this Ask an Educator is going to be fire, and I'm ready for it. Any final thoughts or things you want to leave our community with?
Just don't give up. Believe in yourself, believe in our kids, believe in our communities. Yes, Houston's huge. Some bad stuff, but I've also seen a lot of good.
Yeah.
And I've seen the power of a community pulling together. And I've seen schools go from F to A.
I love it.
But it took everybody. It took the parents, it took the teachers, it took the school staff, it took the neighborhood. And
the kids. It took the kids.
And then the kids saw that people cared.
Yeah.
But just, they're not numbers. They're our future. So if I could just send anything, is keep working hard. It's not easy, but it's appreciated. I know that there's many people. I say my rosary every morning and I pray for educators. You're angels on earth right now. And so, thank you for your hard work and don't give up. And I think I'm hopeful just with what I've been learning about this movement.
Yeah.
Equity in education. I feel empowered. I feel ready, and I just think that we're on a brink of change, and it's going to take all of us.
Yep.
All of us together.
I can feel it. I can feel it too, Angelica. I'm so excited we got the opportunity to talk today. I hope, things calm down wind-wise down in Houston.
I was going to say, a little piece of my roof just blew off.
Oh, nice.
I just saw go. I was like, no, but it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. Everything's fine. I'm still on this interview, and
that's all you can do.
Yeah, and it's
things
like
go crazy around you, but
it's like being in the classroom, right? It's like something just flew across the room. We're good. We're fine. Everybody's good.
My puppies didn't bark, so
yeah. But no one's up on the roof or anything. So. Well, Angelica, like I said, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I'm excited to check in a couple weeks and see how your new position is going. And just, I'm looking forward to you and I staying in touch. Thanks for spending time with us.
Oh, well, thanks for talking to me, Susanna. And thank you for all the work that you're doing with your foundation. It's very exciting. And people need to see what you're doing because it's really what needs to be done.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you, Angelica. We'll talk soon, eh?
Oh, yeah. See. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.